President Putin says Russia reserves the right to use all means to protect citizens in eastern Ukraine. Speaking just in the last couple of hours, he told journalists there in Moscow that the former president, Viktor Yanukovych, was ousted from power in an unconstitutional coup. He said troops in Crimea had been invited in and were not Russian soldiers, but pro-Russian self-defense forces. Those same forces have been involved in this tense standoff with Ukrainian troops at an airbase near Sevastopol in Crimea. Warning shots were fired as the Ukrainians approached, unarmed, to ask for access to their planes.
Сейчас командир придет сюда, ведет. Пожалуйста, командир. Переговоры будут, не вопрос. Да, переговоры будут. Остановите толпу и пускай ведут себя.
Всем стоять на месте.
Служащие.
Стой, Олег Олегович, стой.
Мы все военнослужащие, если что. Мы еще граждане.
Но в угоду какому-то одному политическому деятелю мы сейчас столкнуты лбами. Два братских народа. Это неправильно.
Вы специально провоцируете.
Мы не провоцируем. Мы без оружия. Какая провокация? Взять самолеты стоит под охрану.
А вы у нас делаете вообще? Вы без оружия.
Pretty eventful stuff there. Lawrence Lee live for us in Simferopol in Crimea. Lawrence, what's the latest we're hearing on this standoff there at Belbek Air Base?
Well, it's over, and I'll come to that in a second, but quite extraordinary as you've seen, and in many ways the very opposite, excuse me, to the feared military storm that people had worried might happen overnight if the Ukrainians didn't surrender. What happened was at Belbek, Sevastopol's military airport, guarded by Russian troops, these Ukrainians arrived, marched singing the Ukrainian national anthem towards them, demanding that they be given the rights to mend and protect their own aircraft. And you saw in that the Russians firing over their heads, but they carried on regardless. The whole incident, frankly, was over in less than a minute, and once it became clear that the Ukrainian commander was prepared to tell his men to be quiet, "Stoy," he kept saying, "stop," then the Russians seemed to understand that there was a negotiation to be had. And then after that, there was several hours of something of a standoff. A Russian commander was called. He didn't eventually have to turn up. Some of these so-called Crimean self-defense units, civilians, then arrived. But in the meantime, the Ukrainian troops apparently started playing football and at some point later simply just left the base themselves. So what does this all tell you about everything? Well, for a start, clearly it says that many of the Ukrainian troops don't want to defect. They don't want to swear allegiance to the Russians because they were carrying the Ukrainian flag. Similarly, they were carrying a Soviet flag from the Second World War, from when they and the Russians both fought fascism. And I think that's very significant because what it suggests is that they feel highly affronted at the suggestion from Moscow that somehow people down here are in some way supportive of what Moscow calls fascist elements in Kiev. And at the same time, of course, the Russians didn't shoot them. They fired warning shots over their heads. But neither there nor anywhere else, given this apparent overnight ultimatum, have we seen anybody actually get shot. And so it appears that the Russians don't really want to attack the Ukrainians any more than the Ukrainians want to fight.